Well, good morning, Jared's Cooch. When most of you fuckers are sleeping, we're down here pouring concrete at 2:30 a.m. For a Microsoft data center. This data center will be all AI, and with Microsoft's contract with both Sleeper and ESPN, perhaps this data center will have AI that will help fantasy football owners like myself who are so shit and continue to start guys who will constantly ice. Speaking about ices, let's get to our weekly recap. All right, speaking about fantasy football and all this AI, let's talk about what happened in week 12. First game of the week was myself versus Derek. The line was set at 9.5 for me, and as predicted, I win, did not cover. Really had a wonderful outing by Quentin Johnson, a nice ice. If you thought this was going to be an ice video, I have to go buy another six-pack because I've already drank a six-pack of ices this year. Just shows how my year has gone, but at least I played Derek this week. Hey, my team has got some decent players now, but just terrible mismanagement on my part. But I'm now sitting at 5-7. Outside chance of playoffs. Here's my scenarios to get in. I have to win out with the big matchup against Max next week. And I would essentially need Hyatt to lose out. But if I lose next week to Max, I'm out no matter what. So I continue to roll. Derek had only one player have a great day. That was Josh Jacobs. Popped off. But the rest of his team really didn't do shit. So he is sitting at, 3-9 now. Not looking great. He's already in the Sacco bracket. Not much to talk about there. He's just hoping that Josh Jacobs continues to roll in the Sacco bracket. And he gets lucky. So, again, I play Max next week. Derek squares up against Jared. That's going to be a matchup to watch. Talking about the other Sacco bracket matchup, we had Max and Jared. And let's say this matchup wasn't even close. Max is getting hot at the right time. Jay and Daniels pops off. Aaron Jones returned. Pollard played the Texans, which really sucked for me. And Max is peaking at the right time. He's also now at 5-7. All right, we're going to go over the playoff scenarios in a bit, but Max is pretty much in a situation where if he wins out, he's got a very good chance of making playoffs. But a matchup against me next week will be crucial because a loss doesn't fully eliminate him, but he needs a lot more to happen. So 2 wins, he's got a good chance of making playoffs and backdooring. As for Jared, you got to really be thankful that Dicker, the kicker, scored the most amount of points on his team this week. Otherwise, he would have been the worst team of all year. I'll still hold that title with 70 points that he scored. Jared is all but eliminated from the playoff contention, but he could win two and get a lot of help to potentially squeeze in, but he'd have to get a huge point differential for the tiebreaker. So, Jared, you are just about wrapped up in the Sacco bracket as expected, and you get to play Derek next week. Best of luck to you. Don't lose that matchup. And Max, you play me, so best of luck to us. Let's move forward to the playoff teams, right? We'll start off with the unbreakable force versus the unmovable object, which is Marshall and Harrison. And let's flash back Sunday around 2 o'clock. The text went out saying Marshall's a team of destiny. The Eagles are not going to put up 70 points combined, and Marshall should just hold projection, right? Yeah, that didn't happen. Marshall's team fell apart, and Saquon Barkley's utter godly. So let's talk about Marshall first and foremost. He now sits at 7-5. He's in a win and in scenario. That's all he's got to do. He's got a tough matchup next week against, against Hyatt, and that's actually the game of the week, I believe. So that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Win and in for Marshall. All right, Harrison, you can go ahead and hit your screen record. Unfortunately for the rest of the league, Harrison has now clinched the most wins in a regular season, and there's still 2 games left to play. If he wins one of those games, he will beat the 2018 Kyler Murray booster seat for the best regular season win percentage. So his team, he said he did no draft prep, but whatever fucking piece of paper that he brought in was the most accurate fantasy football of all time. Saquon would be a 1-1 next year, and his team just continues to look really good. And he gets to play God next week against Wyatt. Harrison's already in the playoffs. All he's doing right now is playing Wyatt and Hyatt, both teams who really need to make a playoff spot. So he has a chance to kind of help play the playoff scenarios. And then lastly, the biggest matchup in terms of playoffs was Wyatt versus Hyatt, right? And Wyatt just had to avoid the blow-up game from the Ravens on Monday night. And he kind of did that. The Ravens only put up 40 points. So Wyatt with the big win now sits at 7-5. He's in a very similar position as Marshall. Win and in. Okay, so if he wins any of his next matchups, he's guaranteed playoffs. He's really going to want to try to win next week. Don't wait till week 14 to get that dub against Marshall. But he plays, again, Harrison next week, and that's a very tough matchup. So best of luck to Wyatt. Hyatt, this is a fascinating scenario. Hyatt's team is just crumbling in terms of win percentage. He's still one of the highest scoring teams in the league, but he is 6-6. He's very much in line to lose a playoff spot to Max. He's got to win out to guarantee a playoff spot. If Max were to lose to me, and Hyatt was to win next week against Marshall, then Hyatt would feel a lot better about a playoff spot going into week 14. There's no way I'll catch up on a tiebreaker. So, very fascinating matchup for Hyatt. So, fantasy football is just crazy. Let's talk about the crazy playoff scenario that could happen. All right, guys, with all this playoff talk, let's talk about what happens in week 13. Let's talk about our chaos scenario. Okay, most likely we see Max win, goes to 6-7. I lose, I'm out. If Wyatt loses to Harrison, which is the more likelier outcome, but this could still flip, they'll put Wyatt at 7-6. Marshall, if he lost to Hyatt, we'd have 3 guys at 7-6, which would make week 14 absolute chaos. So this matchup doesn't matter. Both these guys are out in this scenario. No matter what, at 7-6, one of these guys makes the playoffs. So win and in. The other guy would be, let's say, Marshall, the team of Destiny, wins it, and he goes to 8-6, and then this would put Wyatt at 7-7. Now, Max, Derek, what we all know what should happen here. This would put Max at 7-7, and Derek is nice 3 and 11 year. Harrison and Hyatt, this is a hell of a matchup. This could be for all the marbles. If everything holds, Harrison continues his incredible year, and we put Hyatt at 7-7. So, bam, you got 3 teams, Wyatt, Max, and Hyatt, all at 7-7, and one of these teams would get eliminated based off the points scored. It could be absolute scenes. It could get even crazier if you see even more loss. If you see a loss from Hyatt here, this game would get really important. It's just incredible what could happen. This is why we fucking love fantasy football.